Well, the 49ers offensive line is playing very, very well. It might be time to toss those preconceived notions about how they do in 2025 out the window. And today they tried out 5 new players. This is just a visual representation of where San Francisco is offensive line wise from 2 independent sources: PFF on the X axis, ESPN on the Y axis. You could see the 49ers logo right here, not too far from the Arizona Cardinals logo. That just happens to be the matchup for San Francisco coming on Sunday. Home opener at Levi's Stadium. Anyway, Spencer Burford, the 49ers swing tackle, who hadn't had to play an extended action yet, he's dealing with an injury, a knee issue, and Kyle Shanahan said that he'd be day-to-day this week, but based on the initial healing, the 49ers would adjust that potentially. Maybe it turns into a week-to-week thing. We don't know exactly where Spencer is at this moment in his recovery. We're going to talk to Kyle Shanahan at the facility tomorrow, but we can report that the 49ers have worked out 5 offensive tackles today, including 2 players who were with the team in 2024. Chris Hubbard, veteran offensive tackle, some starting experience in this league, and Brandon Parker, same thing, veteran tackle, starting experience in the NFL. Both were amongst the 5 workouts for San Francisco. The other 3 players are LaRaven Clark, Zachary Thomas, and Matt Woletsko. So all 5 of these guys auditioning today, presumably to fill in for Spencer Burford at that 49ers left or swing tackle position. So just to give you an idea of the opening before the 49ers are needing to fill before I tell you about the players whom they worked out, here's a look at the offensive line. Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz. Spencer Burford is the 49ers backup left tackle, and I would also say backup right tackle because in the snap that Colton McKivitz missed against the Seahawks, Burford actually filled in at right tackle. We saw him in warm-ups for San Francisco of that game ahead of Austin Pleasance as far as his ability to back up the right side. So Burford, I think, can officially be called a swing tackle, but he also is on the injury report for the 49ers, so we'll shade his name right here in this pink color. On top of the fact that he's on the injury report, we know that Ben Barch is dealing with a high ankle sprain. He might go on injured reserve tomorrow. So what I think may happen here is that the 49ers, with an extra O-line spot, almost for sure, with Ben Barch likely headed to IR, are going to sign one of the tackles that they worked out. And that tackle may have to assume the Spencer Burford position of depth on the exterior offensive line. If San Francisco believes that Drew Moss has developed enough at this point to be trusted during game time, maybe we see Drew Moss activated this next week to be the backup for Connor Colby. Colby's going to fill in for Ben Barch. So I can't make this move officially yet for San Francisco because Barch is not on injured reserve, but almost certainly tomorrow his name is not going to be on this first string anymore, and we're going to slide Connor Colby's up to here. Then it's a question of who backs up Connor Colby. Is it Drew Moss, or will the 49ers have to elevate Nick Zakelj or even promote Nick Zakelj from the practice squad? Those are the questions that we're going to be asking ourselves as we go to bed tonight ahead of Wednesday. But the 49ers did work out 5 offensive tackles. Remember, Burford could be an emergency guard for the 49ers as well, but I think that they've noticed that he's much better at tackle than guard. This has been obvious that Burford is better at tackle than guard. He didn't play well at guard for the 49ers when he was a starter there, but in his spot duty at tackle, he has actually performed well, so much that they began trusting him with the swing tackle role this year. So anyway, the 5 the 49ers brought in today will likely, whoever's picked out of that group will likely be asked to reprise the swing tackle role that Burford was playing for San Francisco. So LaRaven Clark, no, he hadn't played for Baltimore, but LaRaven Clark, 32 years old, has been around the league, has been a journeyman, 3rd rounder in the 2016 draft, hurt in the 2020 season with a torn Achilles, but that obviously is far in the rearview mirror. We're in 2025 now. Has been around since that 2016 season, has started some games at guard, but has been primarily a depth piece over the course of his NFL career. LaRaven Clark is 6'5", 319. Chris Hubbard and Brandon Parker, those are the two guys who have been with the 49ers before. Hubbard they're competing to be a 49ers swing tackle, maybe even a backup right tackle over the course of last offseason. Hubbard ended up being signed to the practice squad. They both were cut at the cut down, but they were able to get Hubbard back to the practice squad. But in October, he was poached off of that practice squad. He is now 34 years old. He does have starting experience, but is obviously past his physical prime. However, if you need somebody to fill in a pinch and be ready quickly, you'd go for more experience like Chris Hubbard. So he worked out for the 49ers today, as did Brandon Parker. Parker was a promising third-round pick of the Raiders initially. Injuries derailed his development. Parker, 29 years old, 2024 offseason with the 49ers, did not make that 2024 team, and he is currently available, and he worked out with the 49ers today. The last two guys, Zachary Thomas and Matt Waletzko, are both younger, which might make them appealing options for San Francisco. Zachary Thomas is 27. 6 games he played for the Texans last year in 2024, former 6th-round pick. And Matt of the 2022 draft, same draft, saw Matt Waletzko go in the 5th round. He's only 25. So the 49ers feel that there's some developmental upside here. Matt Waletzko could be somebody that they sign to the team, but they might need somebody that they think is ready-made right now. So maybe they won't go with a younger guy. We'll see tomorrow based on the injury situation. But Waletzko, 25, he has had some shoulder issues, shoulder subluxation issues, which is the same term that was used on Ricky Pearsall. And Ricky Pearsall had that concern coming out of college, might eventually require surgery, but it appears that Ricky Pearsall has found a way to keep that shoulder situation quiet, at least for the time being. So the 49ers might have some experience to enable them to be a little bit more comfortable with signing somebody like Waletzko. So look out for LaRaven Clark, Chris Hubbard, Brandon Parker, Zachary Thomas, Matt Waletzko. I would predict that the 49ers sign one of these guys tomorrow. Again, back to the roster. You'd expect to see, I don't know how they're going to mix up the practice squad and the 53-man roster, so maybe they sign him to the practice squad. But there are a couple injuries here, Ben Barch and Spencer Burford, that the 49ers are going to have to address. They could put Barch on IR. If Burford's not long-term, just keep him stashed on the 53. They could promote Zakel to the 53-man roster so they don't have to use practice squad elevations on him. And they could sign one of these tackles that they looked at today to the practice squad and then use a game day elevation for one of those tackles. They currently have 2 backup tackles on the 53 in Spencer Burford and Austin Pleasance. The idea entering the year was that Burford would stay on the left side and Pleasance would be the specific right tackle backup. But again, when we saw Burford taking some snaps during warmups at Seattle at right tackle, I think it became clear that he had graduated to the 49ers swing tackle role, wasn't limited to just the left side. So we'll see what they do with Pleasance moving forward, but there could be some shuffling along that offensive line. All things considered, the 49ers are in a good spot right now. San Francisco, even though they've been a little beaten up here the first couple weeks of the season, they've managed to be firmly above average offensively and defensively. In fact, if you look at DVOA, I know this is EPA that we're looking at, and it's about even for offense and defense, but by DVOA, which is opponent adjusted, which probably isn't the most accurate yet at this time of the year, but we can recite it anyway. They're the number 11 offense and the number 5 defense. So they're ahead of where we thought they would be defensively. We were talking about maybe Robert Saleh can keep this around number 20, 15 to 20 defensively at the start of the year, and those guys can blossom later on. That's turned out to be an underestimation on my part. And I get it. They still have to be tested more, and they will be tested more as this season progresses. But to see a number 5 defense in terms of that DVOA over the first 2 weeks is promising. That's all going to be correlated here to the EPA. We expect the 49ers defense to improve over the course of the year, which would move their logo up. So I'm motioning up. And I would say that an offense with Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and Demarcus Robinson available, which it isn't right now, but I would say that an offense with those guys available would move further to the right. So there are two avenues for the 49ers to get up to tier one, right? With the Packers, the Rams, the Chargers, the Bills, and the Ravens. One is through, or let's say three avenues. But the first avenue could be through keeping the defense the same, offensive improvement. So you would take their logo and you'd move it up here and you'd be in tier one. Second avenue would be through offensive standstill, but defensive improvement. Move it up here. Or avenue three, which I think is the most attainable and which looks entirely possible based on where the 49ers are as a team right now, would be a diagonal move to the right up here. Because you improved both the offense and the defense. And you move to this spot and you could be right where the Rams are right now. Maybe the Rams regress a little bit. When I look at something like this, it makes me really excited about the schedule ahead because the Rams and the 49ers play in week 5. And I think that could be a really good early gauge point of who the favorite is in the NFC West. Because, I talked about Brock Purdy. We can do Brock Purdy update with a big show earlier today. Probably won't see him play unless he's 100%. I don't see the reason for the 49ers to push him out there at less than 100% this week against the Cardinals. Don't want a re-aggravation of the toe injury. So you're probably going with Mac Jones. Could be wrong. Brock Purdy could come out there and be feeling perfect all week long. Who knows? But they've kept a lot of this injury stuff under wraps. But assuming that he's not 100% and he doesn't play, Mac Jones goes this week. Brock Purdy theoretically available to go against Jacksonville the week after that for the 49ers. But in the interim, you're making sure that the protection for either Purdy or for Jones along that offensive line is as bolstered as possible. And you need to make some roster moves because Ben Barch is hurt with a high ankle sprain and Spencer Burford looks to have a knee issue as well. What else did we have today? Today was one of those days where it was laundry day. It was a good chance to chill a little bit. The 49ers are going to be back out on that practice field ahead of this interesting divisional game against the Cardinals tomorrow. I, of course, had the grades article up on the San Francisco Standard, which you should be catching up with. And we had some really interesting stuff online today about the 49ers coverage rates as far as different coverage schematics that Robert Saleh has been using. I actually really, really like this graphic. Let's take a look at this one right here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. So this is 49ers defensive coverage usage over weeks 1 and 2. You could see San Francisco here, third from the top. Cover 3, we get it. This is 38% cover 3, that they run quite a bit of cover 3, but this used to be well over 50% in the first go round of Robert Saleh. Where did that cover 3 zone usage morph into? What did it morph into? Cover 1, which is man coverage. The 49ers have been sending more blitzes. They've been playing man on the back end. They have been trusting their defensive backs to get the job done while Robert Saleh sends more heat after the quarterback. This is not your 2018 Seattle-style defense for the 49ers. 20% cover 1, that really shows you that this defense has evolved for San Francisco. I thought that was one of the more fascinating stats of the day. Cam Jordan, this is a good one right here. This is a video from Cam Jordan of the Saints. My own Mike sent this to me. I've got to scroll up and save it. The 36-year-old defensive tackle or defensive, he's a 3-4 player. So defensive lineman of the Saints, will say, was not happy with how much noise 49ers fans were making in the Superdome on Sunday. Let's get a piece of Cam Jordan's mind.
I was asking earlier more about just the volume of 49ers fans that were in here. Was that surprising to you?
Yeah, didn't like it. Didn't like the noise coming from them, especially when the Saints Nation has been so strong for so long. One of the rare instances where you could actually hear an opposing crowd and in a loud manner. So we gotta give our team more ways to win. We gotta figure out how to give the city more hope, and hopefully this shit never happens again.
Hope that never happens again. I was in the Superdome on Sunday. It was, I thought, over 50% 49ers fans. It was filled to the brim with people, but the red, I thought, outnumbered the black and the gold as far as jersey colors went. in the stands. It was impressive. A lot of 49ers fans from the South. I'm currently in Nashville right now, going to fly back to San Francisco tomorrow, but I was on the plane from New Orleans to Nashville, and there were a lot of 49ers fans going back to Nashville. I met a lot of 49ers fans from Mississippi, from Louisiana, from Alabama, all of whom had driven in for the game. And I also had a beer. Shout out to Pat, but I'm sure he's watching, or maybe he's flying back to the Bay Area right now. But I had a beer with 49ers fans who had flown in from the Bay Area. Took the direct United flight from SFO to MSY. That's the New Orleans airport, which is nice now. They renovated the airport. It's in a whole new terminal building. That's been that way for a few years now. But the direct flight from San Francisco to New Orleans was packed with 49ers fans. Then by the way, the pilot of the Southwest flight from New Orleans to Nashville was a 49ers fan, and he came out of the cockpit, and as every fan with a 49ers jersey was coming on, he was giving them fist bumps. So that happened. So did the fact that I passed the gate yesterday, Southwest gate at New Orleans, of the flight leaving to Oakland, and that was going to be a direct, obviously, to the Bay Area, packed with 49ers fans. My main point just corroborates what Cam Jordan was saying there. 49ers fans came from everywhere to take over the Superdome. And look at the decisive play, Bryce Huff and his strip sack. That was the fastest sack of the entire season so far in the NFL. Bryce Huff got from where he was lined up to Spencer Rattler to force the fumble in less than 2.5 seconds. No other sack has been that quick this year. Now, home teams have a material advantage typically in the NFL because of the crowd noise. They usually don't hear crowd noise when their offense is operating, but it's really loud, especially in some of these domes, when their defense is operating, and that hurts the opposing offense. Normally, you don't see the get-offs that somebody like Bryce Huff was able to notch on the road because it's quiet in there and it's a verbal count. It's not a silent count. You could time a silent count a lot more easily than a verbal count. The Saints had to go silent, though, especially on that last drive, because the 49ers fans were making so much noise that I think you almost have to credit part of Bryce Huff's speed on that get-off on the fact that they had to run silent. So in a big way, let's put it in a not insignificant way, 49ers fans can credit themselves for aiding that Bryce Huff sack to decide the game. Like, home field advantage in football is a real thing, and I think it most tangibly can aid a pass rush. And that's maybe what we saw on Sunday. Cam Jordan certainly wasn't happy about it. He's been with the Saints since 2011. His rookie year was when the Saints lost a candlestick in the divisional round. Thomas Morstead, the 49ers punter, was his teammate on that Saints club. And so Jordan has seen a lot of good Saints football in the Superdome. I mean, a full decade of Drew Brees, who was obviously a really, really good player for this New Orleans team, and loud crowds, awesome venue. I mean, New Orleans is something else when it comes to setup of the football stadium, not too far down there from Bourbon Street. So Cam Jordan has seen a lot of great moments where that crowd was deafening in the Saints' favor. I will tell you that when Jawan Jennings was sprinting to the end zone, I got that kind of like splintering noise in my ears with 49ers fans cheering. And that's exactly what Cam Jordan was talking about in that video. He definitely noticed. The 49ers noticed. Kyle Shanahan says that he wished he could have gone out on Bourbon Street after the game. Obviously, the 49ers had to fly back, so Kyle didn't get to do that. And 2 of the last 3 times the 49ers have been down in the Big Easy, they've gotten a win. That one time that they lost was 2020, but the crowd was much smaller then. They had crowd limitations in New Orleans during that season. So that's a look at what Jordan said. Now, I want to tell you about Bryce Huff. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. It's really, really clear after that game, after the first 2 games, but after 5 pressures and what he did, that the Eagles just made a mistake. They either made a mistake in signing him and then not finding a role for him, or I would agree more with the second one, in signing him and not realizing that this guy doesn't fit their system. They asked him to do something that was totally different than what had made him the money with the Jets. Like, he signed on for $18 million annually because he needs to put his hand in the dirt on passing situations, not play more than 40% of the snaps, pin his ears back, and get after the quarterback. What Huff did to close the game is his specialty. It's not to sit there and read and react and play the run on first and second down. And that's why he got pancaked in some of those famous clips with the Eagles. He won a Super Bowl ring, but he wasn't really playing for Philadelphia down the stretch. He was a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. The 49ers, meanwhile, are using Bryce Huff the way that he should be used. They're not miscalculating the way that Philadelphia did. And they're also getting him while the Eagles are paying most of his contract. The Eagles are picking up $9 million of his 2025 pay just because they needed to get him out of town because they weren't using him right. He was taking up a roster spot, taking up too much cap space. So they're picking up over half of his salary. And for a game-closing player, for a Mariano Rivera type of closer, somebody that could slam the door shut, we saw the ability on Sunday. That's a hell of a deal for the 49ers. Eagles botched that situation. They haven't botched all too many of them lately. They've been a really good team. They won the Super Bowl last year. We know that Howie Roseman has been able to develop and draft and develop. Let's put it that way. The coaching staff has developed. You got to give Philadelphia credit for that. But Bryce Huff has not been one of the success stories. And in fact, he might become the next 49ers defensive line reclamation story under Chris Kacerek. All right, let's get some questions up there. I'm looking to see if I have some more good graphics for you that came out today. The internet seems to be awash in good 49ers data, but it's time for me to answer some of the good questions. It was loud both weeks with 49ers fans in Seattle and at the Superdome. Although I think it was a little bit louder in the Superdome, but it is hard to tell. Both of those stadiums are designed to engineer noise. The Seattle stadium may be accidentally because the parabolic overhangs meant to block rain, but they still reverberate noise. And New Orleans is a dome, and domes are always going to be loud. My first time in that building, I thought it was a great experience. Colby is starting, yes, but the offensive linemen whom the 49ers are worked out today are offensive tackles who probably have some guard adaptability. In fact, one of them, LaRaven Clark, started 3 games at guard earlier in his career. Spencer Burford is a tackle now, but he has started more at guard earlier. I think Burford would be an emergency guard if the 49ers needed him to be. So if you're going to be replacing Spencer Burford, if that's the goal here, you might be looking for a skill set that roughly mirrors that. Drove in from Mississippi. Oh, no, you were in Texas. You drove over, so you took Interstate 10, right? Interstate 10, it's the Christopher Columbus Transcontinental Freeway. It begins in Santa Monica in LA and goes all the way to Mac Jones' hometown of Jacksonville. They should call it the Mac Jones Transcontinental Freeway. Too bad it doesn't go from Jacksonville to San Francisco. Interstate 80, by the way, goes from San Francisco. It starts at the Bay Bridge and ends all the way in New York. So 80 connects San Francisco, New York. 10 connects LA and Jacksonville. And it goes through Texas, through like Beaumont, Texas, right? You could tell me where you're from. But then also connects Louisiana and New Orleans and continues on there past Mobile, Alabama, past Destin, Florida, all those places. They call that the 30A coast, right? It's a nice coastline, by the way, all the way to Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm guessing that your name is Dave. I'm guessing that you took Interstate 10 from Texas into New Orleans. Any update on Jawan Jennings? It's going to be a day-to-day thing this week. We're going to talk to Kyle Shanahan tomorrow, so stay tuned. We're going to be talking about Jawan and all of the 49ers whose availability for Arizona may be in question. Roy doesn't think that Colby will relinquish his position. He was good over 61 snaps, but now there's going to be tape on him. There's going to be tape, and teams are going to game plan and try to expose that tape. The NFL is a perpetual chess match. You can never let your guard down. One game of success does not mean 2 games of success. 2 doesn't mean 3. You constantly have to be evolving in the chess match. Does Upton Stout's blitz ability push Saleh to dial out more blitzes to take pressure off the DBs? Well, I think it puts more pressure on the DBs in a way because there's fewer DBs to cover. But I see what you mean. And the answer to your question is partially yes. His blitz ability does push Saleh to dial up more blitzes because he's a good blitzer. We saw 3 tackles in the backfield for Upton Stout in this game. 3 pressures, I should say. 2 tackles in the backfield, 1 pressure. So he's a good blitzer. He's built like a brick. He's got a good nose for the football, nose for the ball carrier. And yes, that's enough for Robert Saleh to continue calling such plays. Interstate 10 also runs through El Paso. So it goes all the way from El Paso on the west side of Texas, and it's going to cross the entire state, past Beaumont and all those places, and head to New Orleans. You know, I flew over El Paso on the way from New Orleans to San Francisco. But here, looking at the map of Interstate 10, you go LA, obviously Santa Monica, LA. So you go through downtown LA, through Ontario, San Bernardino, Palm Springs. You cross the border to Arizona at the very desert there. Does it go through Blythe? I think it goes through Blythe, California, right? Or is that Interstate 8 that goes through Blythe? I don't even know. No, yeah, you go through Blythe and then you cross the border. Interstate 8 goes through Yuma. You go through Phoenix, cut down to Tucson through Las Cruces, New Mexico, then down to El Paso. Does it go through Albuquerque too? I see Las Cruces here. No, it looks like it doesn't go through Albuquerque. Sorry, I don't see no, Albuquerque is much further north. Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Yeah, so Las Cruces, Ciudad Juarez, El Paso, right across the border from each other. Then the long drive through Texas, San Antonio, Houston, Beaumont, like I said, I was right on that one. Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, Louisiana. That is Interstate 10. That would be the route. Now, you would have to connect with 5, or if you wanted to take the scenic route, 1 or 101 from the Bay Area, but that's how you would drive all the way to New Orleans. If somebody made that drive, I have a prize for you. I don't know what it would be, but I would have a prize for you. That'd be really cool if you made the entirety of that drive for this game. Now, what would be cool is if we had people from every one of those cities along Interstate 10 watching live right now. That would be really neat. Sounds like we got El Paso in the house. That's pretty neat. El Paso is in the house with Alex there. Thank you, Alex. We might have Phoenix in the house. 915 is El Paso. That's cool. Any updates on Trent Williams? Trent's doing great. Trent didn't give up a single pressure playing through the bone bruise in his knee on Sunday. So one of the greatest offensive linemen to ever do it, had a really nice game for the 49ers. Update on Purdy was this morning, and we're going to have another one tomorrow for you. I think it's likely he's back at some point within the next 2 games. Oklahoma City in the house. Cool. Well, Oklahoma City's not on Interstate 10, though. Oklahoma City, they number the interstates based on how far north or south they are, or east and west. Anyone that ends in a 0 is running east and west. 10 is the furthest south. Oklahoma City is on Interstate 40. I happen to be on Interstate 40 right now, too, in Nashville. So Oklahoma City and Nashville are connected by the same east-west interstate. We got people from everywhere. Sumter, South Carolina. Gary is driven from Modesto, so he took 99, I'm sure, to Lafayette, Louisiana. That sounds like 99 down to the 210, and I say the 210 because that's an LA freeway. They put the in front of the freeway. So 99 to the 210 to the 10, and then it just became 10. Then you lost the as soon as you got out of the LA area. There's no the in front of the freeway. You took 10 all the way across to Lafayette, which is ahead of New Orleans on your way. That's a hell of a drive. Congratulations. Virginia, that's really cool. Danville, love it. Brian is in Omaha, Nebraska, which means that you're on 80, right? Or does that mean you're on 80? I'm looking at my map now. Omaha, that's got to be 80. Tell me I'm right. Map. Yeah, he's on 80. So you're connected to San Francisco. If you just right now, if Brian hopped on 80 and headed west, then he eventually would get to the Bay Bridge if he didn't miss any of the kind of interchanges to stay on 80. He would get to the Bay Bridge, he would enter San Francisco, and then 80 would be over. 80 dies as soon as you hit downtown San Francisco. It turns into one-on-one. I love that. Oh my God, we got Maui, Hawaii in the house. None of the interstates that we're talking about connect to Richard over in Maui. You know, you have to swim. There was a time when like you would look up directions to Hawaii, and I don't know if Google changed this for liability reasons, but it would be like drive to Ocean Beach in San Francisco, and then it would be the next step would be swim 2,000 miles to Hawaii. And then it would be like, okay, now get out of the ocean and keep on driving. And I don't know if they still do that, but that was back in the day. And once I was told to swim across the Atlantic Ocean when I looked for walking directions to Europe. All right, do we have any 49ers questions? The Jordan Watkins update. I'm going to have all of these tomorrow. This is our show to prepare for the week. So I gave you the 5 offensive linemen the 49ers worked out: LaRaven Clark, Chris Hubbard, Brandon Parker, Zachary Thomas, and Matt Waletzko. That is the information for today. I had the Brock Purdy update earlier. You can go watch that video if you want that in depth. So you can go check that out. Tomorrow in the morning, I get on a flight. I'll be at practice. I'm also going to be looking at the new food that they have in Levi's Stadium. So hit the subscribe button, tune in, do all that good stuff. That is all coming up. Tomorrow, our interstate talk is over. 49ers update is wrapped up. See you guys very soon.